Hey, it is Zennial Gamer, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite 2A monsters, Jultan. So if you've ever seen me use him on stream or in Siege, you'll know that I use him all the time. He is hands down one of the best PvP monsters for guild content and Siege content to counter Lorens and other meta-light monsters. Now, Jultan, one of the other reasons I love him is because he's actually really easy to rune. So he does benefit from having lots of stats, but realistically, all he actually needs is a ton of HP, a little bit of defense, a little bit of speed and accuracy, and then the rest is just kind of like fluff. It's beneficial, but it's not necessary. Now, because Jultan is so easy to rune, it makes your runing options pretty flexible. And we're going to talk about runing options in a minute, but first let's just take a quick look at his skills and understand what he does. So we'll start off with the leader skill. He's got a 16% speed lead in guild content. Not the fastest lead, obviously, and most of the time I use him. I'm not trying to take first turn anyway, so it's not like it's essential, but it is really nice to have. Now, what makes him amazing is his passive. He inflicts 12% of his own max HP as damage whenever he's attacked with a critical hit. Now, that thing, I think a lot of people overlook that he actually has to be hit with a critical hit, and then he's going to inflict continuous damage and weaken the defense with every attack. Now, having that on a passive is amazing because it means it works on both his skill 1 and his skill 2. So his skill 1 has the ability to block, it disturbs HP, it blocks healing, also inflicts continuous damage and defense break. Doesn't do much damage, but it's really a setup skill. And then his skill 2 does HP scaling damage, and it has basically an 80% chance to stun the enemy. It's two 40% chances. Now, with all 2As, I think this is really important that we talk about whether or not it's worth skilling them up. So let's take a look at Jultan. Now, the passive is obviously not going to need to devil or skill up at all. So we're going to have 2 on his skill 2 and 2 on his skill 1. Now, the skill 1 doesn't really do much damage, so the extra 20% damage here isn't significant. Mostly what you're hoping to get out of this is the defense break, and then the continuous damage and the heal block are nice, but pretty much you're going for the defense break. Now, the skill 2 does a little bit more damage, but I will say the extra 10% harmful effect, now we're talking about a stun rate, that's pretty much what matters. So it's a multi-hit, it's a 2-hit, so that 10% harmful effect rate basically doubles. It's like 20%. The real question is it worth potentially 4 Devilmons for that extra 20% chance to stun the enemy once every 3 turns? For me personally, as you can see on screen, it's not. Even though Jultan is one of my favorite monsters, he works incredibly well without skill ups. Ultimately, when it comes to Jultan, it's all about his passive. We're going to be using him in situations where light monsters attack him and then take reflected damage back to themselves and ultimately kill themselves. And we're going to be making him super tanky so that he can survive all of those hits. And because of that, he's not going to be doing quite as much damage. Obviously, he does HP scaling damage, but we're not going to have him in a crit damage build, so he's still not going to do quite as much damage as the other nukers that you're bringing him with. What we want him there for mostly is just stuns, defense breaks, he's a setup monster, and then that reflected damage. Now let's talk about his runes. A monster like Jultan, you can rune in a lot of different ways, because ultimately all he really needs is to be in triple HP with defense, speed, and accuracy subs, and then anything else you can put in there is great. But basically you want his HP as high as you can get it. You want to make sure that he's got a reasonable amount of defense. Again, we just want to make sure that he can live. He's just a punching bag. And then, like I said, a little bit of accuracy so he can land those defense breaks, continuous damage, and all of that. Doesn't need a ton of accuracy because you're usually not going to be bringing him in against monsters that are built on resistance, with the possible exception of maybe Jean. Now, I've found that his speed is not quite as important. It is nice to have some speed, but the main thing is you want to make sure that he's not going to get lapped by the other monsters on the team. He does need to land that defense break. And if you're going to bring him in against a very common comp is Ciara, Lauren, and Perna. So if you're going to bring him in against that comp, you do want to make sure that he's fast enough that the Ciara on the enemy side can't lap him either. So for me, about 180 has been a really effective speed in G2 Siege, G3 Guild War levels. Now, as far as the Rune Sets go, there's no reason whatsoever to put this guy in Violent because he's not a damage dealer and he's not a healer. He is, again, a punching bag. I personally like Shield Will. I've got him in Shield Will Nemesis right now. I think Shield Will Revenge is a better build, But I will say there are probably two builds where you're going to genuinely benefit from the set effect. One is the Shield Will Revenge, and the other is Triple Revenge. Now, the main difference between those two builds, if you're on Triple Revenge, you're basically trying to let the enemy defense break you so that all other monsters chase you. If you're on Shield Will Revenge, most of the time you're going to assume that the Lauren is going to strip you anyway, or at least the Lauren is going to do enough damage that the other monsters will chase you if they're element neutral. But this allows me to bring him in against Orions and so forth. The flip side to that is that the Revenge, well, obviously I'm not on Revenge at all, but if I was in Shield Will Revenge, I'd be getting fewer Revenges, which means fewer defense breaks, less continuous damage. So being on that Triple Revenge is going to give you a lot more defense. Remember, skill 1 defense break. So pretty much either of those two options will work well, but just remember that this is one monster where it truly doesn't matter. Use the runes that you can't use on anybody else that are going to make him shine at the same time. Kind of like a Skogul. We're talking huge HP subs, huge defense subs, with less speed and a little bit of accuracy. And he's just going to do his job amazingly well without taking away runes that you could use on someone else. If you can make that work in Triple Revenge, or you can make that work in Shield Will, that's amazing. But in this case, it's truly not essential. Okay, so as you guys can see, the Sierra Lauren Perna is actually one of my better performing defenses. So we're going to go ahead and test that one out. So in this comp, the Lauren is going to go after the Jultan first. Now, if I was on Triple Revenge, she'd be guaranteed to defense break me. The Sierra would chase. Since I'm on Shield Will, the Lauren may strip or may not, depending on whether or not it derps, and that determines where the Sierra is going to go. For that reason, I've brought in two water monsters that both have Will runes so that the Sierra can't actually do anything either way. Actually outsped, that's right, because I'm on a Violent. My Lauren is Violent. So, and there you go. The Lauren Violent procced herself right into about 12,000 damage right off the bat. So now, of course, the Theomars being attribute neutral means that we can go right into the Sierra. And this is the first counter I use against this team every time. So you can see that I'd be able to just do this pretty much all day long. I mean, we basically just dropped this to the point where I could just auto now, and there'd be no risk whatsoever. And then just to look at another example that's going to be completely free to play with the, I guess the Jultan's not, but the Theomars and the Fran, they're free to play monsters. There we go. The Lauren actually landed the strip, did not get the defense break. So the Fran goes, we're just going to attack break right here now. And then again, the Sierra can't do anything through the immunity, and now I have my attack buff Theomars. Even without the proc, I would have killed the Sierra next time because I would have had immunity up. But as it went, I can, at this case right now, I can pretty much just ignore that Lauren. And all these times that she's proccing, she's actually damaging herself. You can see I haven't touched her and she's almost dead already. Now, if we are actually able to kill the Perna right here, then she could pretty much just suicide herself. Or the Perna will just go after, there you go, the Perna will just go after the Jultan. So we'll just keep ignoring this Lauren. So you guys get the idea of how effective Jultan is against Lauren, but what about other light monsters? Okay, so while I'll admit that Jean, Amarna, Elsharion is not exactly a meta defense, they are all monsters in really good runes. There's 2 defense breaks, there's Provoke, there's Resurrect, there's Heal. And so it does a pretty good job of demonstrating what we're trying to accomplish. So Tetra may not be completely free to play, but it is 2 other free to play options. Now the Tetra is there just to cool down the Provokes and the defense breaks. The Mina is obviously my primary nuker, and what allows me to use the Mina right here is that all of those light monsters are going to be targeting the Jultan. Mina will never get targeted because there's no AoE attack over there, and that's actually a really important part right here. So if there was like a Ritesh or an AoE defense break, then you would have to be worried about it. Also, if you're wondering why I didn't hit the Amarna right there, it was because the Mina would have lost her 100% crit rate. So we're going to wait for the Amarna's defense break to go away. Now the Tetra will actually cool down these Provokes. And in the meantime, do you see how all these monsters are just damaging themselves? So I'm at full health. And that Amarna just took a bunch of damage just attacking the Jultan. The Elsharion just went down as well. And the Jean doesn't actually even know who to protect. So, You do occasionally see all light defenses. Now, most of these have gone away because of Jultan, but every now and then you'll see a defense that's going to be like Artemil plus Iona and Darion, or usually they're based around Artemil. But even in those cases, the Jultan is basically just going to completely work over the enemy team. All you have to do is make sure that you're doing something to sustain your Jultan, and it'll just keep suiciding itself right off of him. So we're going to close out the video with this 2-man. Now, I did switch out the Amarna just because it would have taken forever if I left the Amarna in there. But we're going to close out this 2-man where you can see there's literally no damage. And all we're going to do is just pop auto and watch the light monsters suicide themselves on Jultan. He's really a very straightforward monster. He's not a very complicated monster to figure out, but he is an incredibly powerful monster who's going to just work absolutely perfectly as a counter to light teams, or to teams that have just one light monster as their primary threat. So again, you just want to make him as HP heavy as you can, but don't forget the defense because he is in there to take a bunch of hits. So if you give him 55k HP, but he's got no defense, he'll die too quick. You want to try and balance it out a little bit so that he at least will be able to take these hits while we're bringing him back up and giving him that sustain. And you can see that was basically the first time I've hit this Elsharion the entire fight. And yet the Elsharion was pretty much almost dead already. There we go. So I literally, and now the Jultan did almost die because we were on auto, so it kept attacking the Jean on invincibility, but the Elsharion still basically suicided itself all the way off the Jultan. And this is literally a 0 damage team. I mean, we've got a Tetra, and then Jultan is built with no crit damage or any of that. The whole enemy team just suicided itself off his passive. For me, it's a ton of fun. And he's one of my favorite monsters. So that's it for today's video, guys. As always, hope you found it useful, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, if you're still with me to this point, then that means that you probably liked the video, found it entertaining, or even better, both. So please smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below because those things help the channel grow, and more importantly, they show me that the video is useful, and that's the whole reason I do this in the first place.